Well, hello again, everybody. Welcome back to Walking Through the Scriptures with Joseph Bahoda. Today, I'm doing another movie review. This is my second one. I did one last time on Honk for Jesus. Today, I'm doing one on Tar. It's a 2022 Cate Blanchett movie where she plays a female maestro over an orchestra. Her name is Lydia Tarr in the movie. And I highly recommend this movie. I give this movie a strong B+. Because as you know, I've made some videos in the past here regarding feminism. And this talks about feminism. And obviously she's a female maestro, so she's broken a lot of barriers because most maestros are male and all that kind of stuff. But it really dives into, you know that saying that says, absolute power corrupts absolutely? Well, this movie kind of goes down that road. What happens if the feminists get their way and they have power just like the men? And this movie shows that since absolute power corrupts absolutely, that women are going to get corrupted too. And women are going to do corrupt things with it as well, which I thought was a very fascinating take. A very fascinating take, considering Hollywood is very pro-feminism and having, women be in charge and all that. So the fact that Hollywood made a movie that went down that route and showed that and explored that, if you give power to women, women will screw it up just like men do. I thought was a fascinating take on power and control. And so what happens in this movie? Well, first of all, there's a couple things. Again, she's a female maestro, and she's absolutely brilliant as a female maestro. She's an absolute musical genius. With that being said, Cate Blanchett in this movie is absolutely fantastic. Her performance as the, sexual harassing, sexual favoritism maestro, she's like brilliant and brutal, but also at the same time brilliant in this movie. Her acting, her performance in this movie is absolutely gorgeous. Cate Blanchett is amazing in this movie. And her role is the things that she does with her role. And again, the first 15 minutes is just basically putting her musical genius on display. This Lydia Tarr, this female maestro that she plays, just absolutely gorgeous. I mean, she's a musical genius. And Cate Blanchett's performance is just masterful in this movie. If you ever have a chance to see the movie Whiplash, this movie is kind of like the female version of Whiplash, which, by the way, Whiplash was an amazing movie as well. If Cate Blanchett doesn't get an Oscar nomination for this movie, I'd be surprised. She's that good for this role. But basically, she's talking to this one particular scene. She's talking to a young black gay musician, one of her students. And, the guy, she was playing a piece on the piano, and the guy was like, well, I'm really not into that because I'm really not into, older, white, cisgendered men. And she taps him on the leg, and she's like, wait a minute, son. She's basically saying, don't be so easily to be offended. Don't be so, quick to be offended. Because she makes the case later on, what happens if 50 years from now, and you're on a stage and you're performing a piece, how do you want people to judge you? Do you want people to judge you by your musical talent, or do you want people to judge you by that young, black, gay man up there playing that piece? And this is a very, very interesting point and so many levels. Because one, it's kind of an indirect slap in the face to, Black Lives Matter and the organization as far as their agenda, but also critical race theory. But it's also taking on the whole cancer culture as well, which I found also very interesting in Hollywood, because Hollywood is very much anti, cancel culture. I should say they are for cancer culture. I'm sorry. So Hollywood is like for cancel culture. They want to go back into your past and just cancel everything. But Cate Blanchett is like anti-cancel culture here. She's like, look, whatever you do for somebody else, eventually 50 years from now, they're going to do to you. So this is really a profound scene against cancel culture, which is, again, in today's Hollywood, that's very much anti-today's Hollywood, because they're for cancel culture. So this is a very profound scene. And she's basically telling her young student, hey, don't be so quick to offend, because 50 years from now, how do you want people to judge you? Which is true, by the way. But it also got me to think, the whole golden rule, do as others as they'd have them do unto you. And then you start thinking, though, is this really the proper application of the golden rule, though? You know what I mean? So it's like, is that really how you want the golden rule to be applied? And there's just so many nuances and layers to this scene. I was like, wow, this is very profound. And again, the fact that it's very much anti-Hollywood, because again, Hollywood is for cancel culture, and Cate Blanchett is now coming against that in this scene, is very profound. But again, also, she does a lot of corrupt things. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. So, she is a lesbian in this movie. And she does this one particular scene where she had a female student called Krista Taylor who she sleeps with. She sleeps with her, and then she ghosts her, and she absolutely stops talking to her or whatever. And then Krista was like, look, I want to be on your symphony. I want to be a part of the group. But she sleeps with her, and then she basically kicks her to the curb. She ghosts her, and then she blocks all email communication. She completely ghosts her, and she doesn't give her the part, so she's not in her orchestra. And then eventually Krista commits suicide, kills herself, and then Tar tells her assistant to delete all emails, to delete everything, get rid of all that stuff. Basically, not only did she ghost her after she slept with her, but then she ghosts her from all her emails. She deletes every single email from Krista Taylor. She basically, once she commits suicide, she basically acts like Krista never existed. Okay, so this is complete misuse of power. Also, there was another scene where there was another young lady who Lydia Tarr was attracted to. She was a celloist, brilliant young celloist, by the way. And what she does in the next play or orchestra, symphony that they have, she decides to give the celloist part to this new, young, attractive lady, as opposed to the other celloist who's been in the symphony for years. So obviously this is blatantly sexual favoritism. This is blatantly sexual harassment for the soloist who's been there, for a celloist who's been there a long period of time. So she's using her power, influence, and control as the maestro to favor the young, attractive celloist as opposed to the celloist who's been there for years. So this is clear sexual harassment. This is clear favoritism. And as I'm watching this, I couldn't help but think, man, if this was a male maestro, he'd be getting sued for sexual harassment, for sexual favoritism. He'd be getting, sued for, ghosting and using his power and control to sleep with women in the orchestra, in the symphony, and then ghosting them, so there's all kinds of sexual stuff going on. If that were a male maestro, he'd be getting completely fired and sued and all this kind of stuff. And she's a female maestro, and now she's doing it. Okay? Again, as far as feminism and the feminism agenda and what would happen if women were in control just like the men, well, absolute power corrupts absolutely. That's what would happen. And this movie shows that on screen. And it's just like, oh my gosh, this is brilliant. This is what we've been saying. What makes us think if women get all the power, they're going to do everything right? No, they're going to screw it up too. And it's just an amazing look as anti-feminism, just giving all the women all the power isn't the grand solution like we think that it is. Now, again, I'm for, fairness and all that. I'm not against women at all, but just to give all women power to kind of make up for all the men who've been screwing it up. What makes us think the women are going to do it any better? And this movie shows that. I'm like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe Hollywood went there. So Lydia Tarr does a lot of bad things. She's very controlling, manipulative, ghosting, sexual harassing, using, her sexuality to sleep with women and then ghost them, and blatantly doing favoritism between the young, attractive women as opposed to other women who've been celloists for years. I mean, there's just all kinds of sexual favoritism going on. It's just, she uses her power and control to get what she wants. It's very, very, very profound and powerful how to display that. However, I can't give this movie an A because the last 30 minutes or so, there's a scene where Lydia Tarr, she basically falls down some stairs and she hits her head on some concrete stairs. And in the movie, it shows where she gets caught up and she gets found guilty of all the sexual harassment. She gets found guilty of deleting her emails from Krista Taylor, who killed herself. She gets found guilty of that, and basically she loses her position from the symphony. And at the end of the movie, she's basically, being a maestro for a musical thing for a video game called Monster Hunters, ironically. So she gets fired. She loses her position. So much, in fact, that one of her maestro friends takes over her orchestra, and she didn't like that. So she comes in and she basically tackles that guy in the middle of the symphony. She tackles him, basically assaults him in the middle. Not basically, she does assault him in the middle of the orchestra. She's like, these are my people and this is my piece. How dare you take my music, type of thing. So she gets fired. She loses everything. And now she's just basically some, loser maestro doing a musical scene for a video game called Monster Hunters. So she loses everything. And you're like, wow, that's great poetic justice. I mean, that's what you get. That's what you deserve. However, though, remember about 30 minutes earlier, she hit her head on the concrete stairs. So it leads to the fact this might be all like in her head. This might be all like an hallucination. And this might be her like guilt from ghosting Krista Taylor. And Krista Taylor is now haunting her from the grave because, again, she committed suicide. So this might be all in, Lydia Tarr's head. So the last 30 minutes or so might not have actually happened. This might be all in her head, and this is just her guilty conscience, why she's hallucinating, kind of like getting back at her for all the bad stuff she did. And I'll be honest, the last 30 minutes of the movie are really weird. So there is some evidence that it might be fake. It might not be real. This is all just an hallucination in her head after she hit her head on the stairs. And that really didn't work for me. I would have liked for the story to be true. And she does get found guilty and all that, because that would bring justice to it. So the movie ends very ambiguous. You don't know if it's true or you don't know what's fake. If it's true, like, good, because she deserved everything she got. But if it's fake, that means she got away with it. And it's all in her head and nothing was real. That ending doesn't sit really well with me, because my sense of righteousness and justice and making sure that, good is done and good prevails and all that. So if it is an hallucination, that ending doesn't work for me. And the movie is very ambiguous. You don't know if it's true or not. So you just kind of, as the audience, you just gotta go, back and forth with it and just kind of use your imagination. So the ending didn't really work for me. So I give it a B+. Also, too, if you're into like very strong action movies and a lot of stuff going on, this movie is not for you. If you're into strong, thrillers, this movie is not for you. If you're into even strong dramas with a lot of stuff going on, this movie is not for you. This movie is about 2.5 hours of dialogue. I mean, it is, you got to have patience to watch this movie. It's very, very, very slow. However, there's very profound, very hardcore, hard-hitting topics that this movie tackles. When I put it this way, when I got done watching it, it's like I wanted to get a hold of all my Christian content creators and be like, guys, gals, have you watched this movie? Because there's so many things that we need to talk about. Like, this movie is hitting on feminism and critical race theory and Black Lives Matter, the organization, and cancer culture. And there's just so many things, corrupt power corrupts absolutely. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. Like, there's just so many things in this movie is tackling. Like, we need to talk about it. And it does. It talks about all that. So I highly recommend this movie. I give it a strong B+. If you haven't checked out Tar, it's on Peacock now. If you have Peacock, you can watch it. And if you don't, maybe you can find it on some other streaming service. But if you have the time, please check out Tar. It's actually really good. Until next time, if this has blessed you, hit the like button, hit the red subscribe button. Please hit the share button. Please get this information out there. I think you'll enjoy it. Until next time, God bless.